My father tried to have me committed. But the psychiatrist believed me. I knew something was wrong when I found myself standing in the middle of Target at 2:47 a.m., wearing my pajamas and holding a bag of frozen peas, with absolutely no memory of how I got there. The security guard's flashlight beam hit my face like a spotlight. "Ma'am, the store's been closed for 3 hours. How did you get in here?" I blinked at him, my mouth dry as cotton, my hands trembling so badly the frozen peas rattled in the bag. I don't know. I was in my dorm room studying for my organic chemistry exam, and then nothing. A complete blank space where the last 4 hours should have been. That was the third incident in 2 weeks. The first time, I'd woken up in my car in the university library parking lot at dawn, still in yesterday's clothes, my textbook scattered across the passenger seat like I'd been frantically studying. The second time, my roommate Jess found me reorganizing every item in our shared mini-fridge at 4 a.m., arranging them by color while crying about my mother's funeral, something I hadn't talked about in months. "You've been acting really weird lately, Maya," Jess had said the next morning, her voice gentle but concerned. "Maybe you should talk to someone." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But every time I tried to explain these episodes to anyone, the words came out jumbled and paranoid. My father, Richard Holloway, had always been good at making me question my own reality, but this was different. This felt like I was losing pieces of myself. The police officer who responded to the Target incident was surprisingly kind. Officer Martinez drove me back to campus personally, asking careful questions about my stress levels, my sleep patterns, whether I'd been taking anything for anxiety. "Just what my dad gives me," I mumbled, leaning my head against the cool window of the patrol car. "He's a doctor. He says I need help processing Mom's death." "What kind of help?" I fumbled in my pajama pocket and pulled out the small white pill I was supposed to take with dinner every night. Dad had started giving them to me 3 weeks ago, right after I'd mentioned wanting to transfer my trust fund, Mom's inheritance, to an account he couldn't access once I turned 23 next month. Something for anxiety. I can't remember the name. Officer Martinez glanced at the pill in the rearview mirror. Something flickered across his face, but he just nodded and drove us through the empty campus streets. Back in my dorm room, I sat on my bed and stared at that little white pill. In the past month, since I'd started taking Dad's medication, my grades had plummeted from a 3.8 GPA to barely passing. I'd missed 2 major exams because I'd slept through them. My friends had started avoiding me because I'd become erratic, emotional, impossible to predict. But the worst part was how Dad responded to each incident. The concerned phone calls to my professors. The worried emails to my academic advisor. The gentle suggestions that maybe I was struggling more than we realized and might need professional help. Professional help. Those words made my skin crawl, especially when he said them with that particular look in his eyes, the same look he'd had at Mom's funeral when he'd insisted on being the sole executor of her estate until Maya is more stable. I palmed the white pill, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. If Dad was trying to help me, why did I feel like I was disappearing? It was time to find out what I was really taking. The pill identification website loaded slowly on my ancient laptop. I held the white tablet under my desk lamp, squinting at the tiny markings etched into its surface, Laura's 2 on one side, WIE, with a score line on the other. My fingers trembled as I typed the imprint codes into the search bar. Lorazepam. 2 milligrams, generic Ativan. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. According to the medical information, lorazepam was prescribed for anxiety disorders, but the dosage recommendations made my blood run cold. For my age and weight, the typical starting dose was 0.5 milligrams, taken as needed. Maximum daily dose, 2 milligrams, split across multiple administrations. I was taking 2 milligrams every single night. The equivalent of a full day's maximum dose, all at once, for 3 weeks straight. The side effects list read like a catalog of my recent life: confusion, memory problems, drowsiness, difficulty concentrating, emotional instability. Long-term use could cause physical dependence and withdrawal symptoms. But it was the warning section that made my hands shake so violently I could barely scroll. Asterisk lorazepam may cause paradoxical reactions in some patients, including increased anxiety, agitation, and bizarre behavior. Elderly patients and those with a history of substance abuse are at higher risk. Asterisk. Mom had struggled with prescription pain medication after her cancer diagnosis. Dad knew that. He'd been her oncologist, for Christ's sake. I screenshot everything, my mind racing. Then I opened a new browser tab and searched for lorazepam blackout sleepwalking. Dozens of forum posts from people describing experiences exactly like mine. Waking up in strange places. Performing complex tasks with no memory. One person had driven 15 miles to their childhood home and woken up sitting on the front porch. Another had ordered $800 worth of items online and found the confirmation emails the next morning. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad, asterisk, how are you feeling tonight, sweetheart? Did you remember to take your medication with dinner, asterisk? I stared at the message, then at the pill still sitting in my palm. For the first time in weeks, my mind felt clear. I'd been so exhausted after my classes today that I'd skipped dinner entirely, coming straight back to the dorm to nap. Which meant I hadn't taken the pill yet. Another text, asterisk, I know things have been difficult since Mom passed. Dr. Brennan says residential treatment might be the best option. Just temporary, until you're feeling more like yourself, asterisk. Dr. Brennan. I'd met him exactly once, 3 days ago, when Dad had insisted I needed a proper psychiatric evaluation. The appointment had been a blur. I'd been heavily medicated, barely able to string sentences together. I remembered Dr. Brennan asking me about hearing voices, about feeling paranoid, about whether I'd ever had thoughts of hurting myself or others. I'd answered honestly. Sometimes the medication made me feel like I was losing my mind, like people were watching me, like I couldn't trust my own thoughts. In my drugged state, it hadn't occurred to me how those responses would sound. My laptop chimed with an email notification. The sender made my stomach drop. Brennan, Psychiatric Associates. Dear Ms. Holloway. Asterisk, following our consultation and your father's reports of continued episodes, I've completed the preliminary paperwork for voluntary admission to Millbrook Residential Treatment Center. Your father and I agree that intensive therapy would benefit your current mental state. Please plan to arrive Monday at 9 a.m. for intake processing, asterisk. Best regards. Dr. James Brennan, MD. Monday. That was 4 days away. I looked at the lorazepam pill in my palm, then at the email, then at my father's text asking if I'd taken my medication. He wasn't trying to help me recover from grief. He was trying to make me disappear. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my desk with a notebook, writing down everything I could remember from the past month. Every conversation with Dad. Every episode I'd experienced. Every concerned phone call he'd made to my professors, painting me as increasingly unstable. The pattern was sickeningly clear once I laid it out chronologically. It had started the day after my 22nd birthday, when I'd mentioned wanting to understand Mom's trust fund better. She'd left me everything, the house in Westchester, her medical practice, nearly $2 million in investments, but Dad had convinced the probate court I needed a guardian until I turned 23 and could demonstrate financial responsibility. Within 48 hours of that conversation, he'd shown up at my dorm with the first bottle of anxiety medication. At 6 a.m., I called the one person I could trust, Mom's sister, Aunt Claire. She lived in Portland now, but she'd known my father longer than anyone. She'd also been the only family member to question why I wasn't at Mom's while reading. Maya. Her voice was groggy but instantly alert. Sweetheart, what's wrong? I told her everything. The pills, the blackouts, the psychiatric evaluation, the admission paperwork. My voice stayed steady until I got to the part about Millbrook Residential, and then I started crying. That bastard, Claire whispered. Maya, listen to me very carefully. Your mother made me promise something before she died. She was worried about Richard's gambling debts. She said if anything ever happened to her, and if he tried to control your inheritance. My pen froze over my notebook. Gambling debts. He owes serious money to some very dangerous people. Your mother found out about it 6 months before she passed. She was planning to divorce him and file a report with the medical board about his prescription practices. She had evidence that he'd been selling pills to patients who didn't need them. The room spun around me. She never said anything. She was protecting you. But Maya, she hid copies of everything in a safety deposit box. Bank statements, photographs, recordings. She gave me the key and made me swear I'd only use it if Richard ever tried to hurt you. I gripped the phone tighter. Where? First National on Main Street in Westchester. Box 847. But honey, you can't go there alone. If he's been drugging you, if he's planning to have you committed. A soft knock at my door made my blood freeze. Through the thin wood, I heard my father's voice. Maya. Sweetheart, I brought breakfast. I was worried when you didn't answer my texts last night. I mouthed, oh God, to Claire, who I could hear moving around frantically on the other end of the line. I'm flying out today, she whispered. Don't take anything he gives you. Don't eat anything. Don't. Maya. Dad's voice again, closer. I can hear you talking. Are you alright? I ended the call and shoved the phone under my mattress, my heart hammering. Then I opened the door with what I hoped looked like a sleepy smile. Dad stood in the hallway holding a coffee cup and a paper bag from my favorite bakery. His smile was warm, concerned, perfectly paternal. But now I could see something else in his eyes that I'd missed before, calculation. You look tired, sweetheart. Did you sleep at all? A little. I stepped aside to let him in, noticing how his gaze immediately went to my desk, scanning for signs of what I'd been doing. I brought your favorite. Cinnamon scone and a vanilla latte. He set them on my desk, right next to my notebook. And I thought we could talk about Monday. I know residential treatment sounds scary, but Dr. Brennan thinks it's really the best option. I looked at the coffee cup, remembering how drowsy I always felt after our breakfast visits. That's so thoughtful, Dad. Let me just brush my teeth first. The moment I closed the bathroom door, I heard him moving around my room. I turned the faucet on full blast and pressed my ear to the bathroom door. The soft rustle of papers. The creak of my desk drawer opening. Footsteps moving toward my bed. He was searching my room. I flushed the toilet and opened the door, catching him standing casually by my window, hands in his pockets like he'd been admiring the view of the parking lot. Beautiful morning, he said without turning around. I was thinking after you have breakfast, we could drive up to Millbrook together. Just to see the facility, get you comfortable with the idea. The coffee cup sat exactly where he'd left it, but my notebook was gone. I'd like that, I lied, moving toward my desk. I could see the corner of loose paper sticking out of his jacket pocket, my handwritten timeline, my research on lorazepam. Everything. Dad turned from the window, his expression perfectly pleasant. Your scone's getting cold. I picked up the pastry and took a small bite, then reached for the coffee. The vanilla scent was stronger than usual, with an underlying chemical bitterness I'd learned to ignore over the past few weeks. Actually, my stomach's a little upset. Maybe I should eat first. I set the cup down and saw the tiniest flicker of annoyance cross his face. Of course. But Maya. He pulled my notebook from his pocket and set it on the desk between us. We need to talk about this. My throat went dry. I was just trying to understand what's been happening to me. Paranoid thinking is a classic symptom of your condition. Creating elaborate theories, seeing patterns that aren't there. His voice was gentle, but his eyes were cold. This is exactly why Dr. Brennan recommended immediate admission. What condition? The words came out sharper than I intended. Early onset bipolar disorder with psychotic features. The same thing your mother struggled with before she started treatment. I stared at him. Mom never had bipolar disorder. She had cancer. She had both. Why do you think she was so dependent on prescription medication? The pain pills were just the beginning, Maya. Toward the end, she was convinced I was trying to poison her. She hid money, made wild accusations, even claimed I was stealing from her patients. He was rewriting history in real time, turning Mom's legitimate concerns into symptoms of mental illness. That's not true. I have medical records. Hospital documentation. Your mother was very sick, sweetheart, and now you're showing the same warning signs. He gestured to my notebook. This paranoid ideation about the medication I'm giving you, it's textbook. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was rage, not withdrawal. The medication you're giving me isn't prescribed to me. It's a temporary measure until we can get you proper treatment. Maya, you called your aunt at 6 o'clock this morning talking about conspiracy theories. Claire is concerned enough that she asked me to move your admission up to today. You talked to Claire. She called me after you hung up on her. She agrees that you need help immediately. Dad picked up the coffee cup and held it out to me. Please drink this. It'll help with the anxiety until we can get to Millbrook. Everything he was saying sounded reasonable, caring, medically sound. If I hadn't spent the night researching lorazepam, if I hadn't found that pill identification website, I might have believed him. But I knew Claire would never betray me. Which meant Dad was lying about the phone call. You're right, I said, taking the cup from him. I have been paranoid lately. Maybe some caffeine will help me think more clearly. I lifted the coffee to my lips, watching relief flood his face. Then I accidentally knocked it against my textbook, sending the liquid cascading across my desk and onto the floor. Oh no. I gasped, jumping back as the coffee spread across my organic chemistry notes. I'm so clumsy lately. Dad's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. It's all right, sweetheart. I can get you another one. That's okay. I should probably eat something first anyway. I grabbed some tissues and started dabbing at the mess, making sure to soak up every drop. You know what? I think I left my phone charger in Jess's car. Can I text her real quick before we go? Maya. His voice was firmer now. We need to leave soon. Dr. Brennan is expecting us at 10. I pulled out my phone, fingers flying across the screen. But instead of texting Jess, I opened my camera and started recording, holding it low so he couldn't see. I know, Dad. I just want to let her know I'll be away for a while. I kept my voice light while angling the phone toward him. How long did Dr. Brennan say I'd need to stay at Millbrook? It depends on your progress. Could be 30 days, could be longer. He moved closer, reaching for my phone. Maya, put that away. We've discussed how excessive screen time affects your anxiety. Just 1 second. I kept recording, my heart hammering. I want to make sure I understand everything. Dr. Brennan said I have bipolar disorder with psychotic features, right? The same thing Mom had. That's right. And that's why she thought you were stealing from her patients. Because of the psychotic features. Dad's face went very still. Maya. Because it's funny, I found these medical journals online last night about lorazepam. Did you know it can cause something called paradoxical reactions? Like blackouts and memory loss and... He lunged for my phone, but I was faster. I spun away from him, still recording, backing toward my dorm room door. Maya, stop this right now. The forums were really interesting, Dad. Lots of people describing episodes just like mine. But here's the weird thing, they all stopped when people quit taking the medication. You're having a psychotic break. His voice was getting louder, more desperate. This paranoid thinking, these conspiracy theories about medication, this is exactly what happened to your mother. So you keep saying. I reached behind me for the door handle, phone still trained on his face. But I called Millbrook this morning, Dad. They don't have any record of an admission scheduled for today. Or Monday. Or ever. The mask finally slipped. For just a moment, I saw pure rage flash across his features before he composed himself again. Dr. Brennan handles admissions privately. Maya, you're scaring me. Please give me your phone and let me call Claire. She's worried sick about you. Claire's on a plane right now. Flying here to help me get to a safety deposit box at First National. Box 847. Mom left me some things there. Dad went completely white. I don't know what your aunt told you, but... She told me about your gambling debts. About the people you owe money to. About how Mom found out you were selling pills to patients who didn't need them. That's enough. He stepped toward me, and for the first time in my life, I was genuinely afraid of my father. Maya, you're having a complete psychotic episode. Give me that phone right now. No. I fumbled for the door handle behind me. I'm done taking your pills, Dad. I'm done with your lies about Mom. And I'm definitely not going to any residential facility. The door opened behind me so suddenly I almost fell backward. Jess stood in the hallway with her arms full of laundry, taking in the scene, me backing away from my father while recording him on my phone, him advancing with his hands outstretched like he was approaching a dangerous animal. Jess said, her eyes darting between us. Is everything okay? Call campus security, I said, not taking my eyes off Dad. Now. Jess looked between us, her laundry basket clutched against her chest like a shield. Maya, what's going on? My father's been drugging me, I said, still holding my phone up, still recording. He's trying to have me committed so he can steal my inheritance. Dad's laugh was perfectly calibrated, concerned, a little sad, exactly what you'd expect from a worried parent dealing with a delusional child. Jess, I'm Dr. Holloway, Maya's father. She's been having some episodes lately. Paranoid thoughts, conspiracy theories about her medication. I watched Jess's face, saw the uncertainty there. Dad looked so reasonable in his pressed khakis and polo shirt, his silver hair neatly combed, his voice calm and professional. I probably looked like I was having a breakdown, unwashed hair, pajamas at 10 in the morning, waving my phone around while making wild accusations. He gave me lorazepam, I said quickly. 2 milligrams every night for 3 weeks. Look it up, Jess. Look up what that does to someone my size. Maya's been struggling since her mother passed away, Dad continued smoothly. She's created this elaborate fantasy where I'm somehow the villain. It's heartbreaking, really. But Jess was already pulling out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. She'd been my roommate for 2 years. She'd seen me go from Dean's List to barely functional. She'd found me reorganizing the fridge at 4 a.m. Holy shit, she whispered, reading whatever she'd found. Maya, this says lorazepam can cause amnesia and sleepwalking behaviors. The internet is full of misinformation, Dad said, his voice tightening slightly. I'm a licensed physician. I know what's best for my daughter. Then why isn't it prescribed to me? I pulled up the photos I'd taken of his pill bottle earlier. Look at the label, Jess. It's prescribed to Margaret Foster, filled 3 days ago. Who's Margaret Foster, Dad? His face went ashen. Margaret Foster was one of his patients, an 80-year-old woman with dementia whose family had been concerned about her increasing confusion. I'd remembered the name from conversations I'd overheard in his home office. You're stealing pills from your elderly patients, I continued, the pieces falling into place even as I spoke. How many Margaret Fosters are there, Dad? How many confused old people getting prescriptions they don't need so you can skim pills to drug me? That's enough, he snapped, lunging for my phone again. Jess stepped between us. Dr. Holloway, I think you should leave. I'm not leaving without my daughter. She's clearly having a psychotic break. Then we'll call campus security and let them sort it out, Jess said firmly. She was already dialing. Yes, I need security at Morrison Hall, room 314. There's a family dispute that needs intervention. Dad's composure finally cracked completely. Maya, you have no idea what you're doing. The money your mother left, it's already gone. The house, the investments, all of it. I've been managing your trust fund for months. What do you mean, gone? Bad investments. Market fluctuations. These things happen. But his eyes were darting toward the door now, calculating. The only way to recover any of it is through life insurance policies that require specific conditions to be met. My blood turned to ice. What specific conditions? If you're declared mentally incompetent and require long-term care, there are provisions. You bastard. The words came out as a whisper. You were going to have me committed permanently. Not for 30 days. Forever. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Campus security. Dad straightened his shirt, put on his concerned father expression. Maya, when the officers get here, I need you to think very carefully about what you say. These delusions you're having, they could land you in a 72-hour psychiatric hold. And once that happens, you can have me declared incompetent and access the insurance money. I'm trying to save what's left of your future. Officer Martinez appeared in the doorway, the same cop who'd found me at Target. His eyes immediately found mine, then shifted to Dad. Ms. Holloway. Your roommate called about a disturbance. Officer Martinez. I held up my phone, which was still recording. I have evidence that my father has been illegally drugging me with stolen prescription medication in order to make me appear mentally ill so he can access my inheritance. Dad stepped forward, his voice taking on that professional, authoritative tone that had convinced judges and doctors for months. Officer, my daughter has been struggling with increasing paranoid delusions since her mother's death. She's supposed to be admitted to residential psychiatric care today, but she's become combative and... Sir, Officer Martinez interrupted, I remember Ms. Holloway from a few nights ago. The incident at Target. He looked at me carefully. You seem much more coherent today, ma'am. I didn't take the pills last night. For the first time in 3 weeks, I didn't take them. Martinez's hand moved to his radio. I think we need to sort this out at the station. The ride to the police station felt surreal. I sat in the back of Officer Martinez's patrol car, clutching my phone like a lifeline, while Dad followed behind us in his silver BMW. Every few seconds, I caught glimpses of him in the side mirror, talking animatedly on his cell phone. Who's he calling? I asked Martinez. Probably his lawyer, Martinez replied grimly. Ms. Holloway, I need you to understand something. Your father is going to claim you're having a psychiatric emergency. He'll have medical credentials, official-looking paperwork, maybe even that psychiatrist on speed dial. My stomach dropped. Dr. Brennan. Right. So when we get to the station, I need you to stay calm and stick to facts. No matter what they say, no matter how they try to twist your words. At the station, Martinez led us to separate interview rooms. Through the glass window, I could see Dad in the room across the hall, gesturing emphatically at a detective while pointing toward me. Even from a distance, I could read his body language, the concerned father, the medical professional dealing with a tragic family situation. Detective Sarah Chen sat across from me, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Maya, I want you to tell me everything from the beginning. Take your time. I started with the night I woke up at Target, then worked backward through the blackouts, the medication, the increasingly concerning conversations with Dad. I showed her the photos of the pill bottle, the research I'd done on lorazepam, the email from Dr. Brennan about residential treatment. You said your aunt is flying here. Claire Holloway. Claire Morrison. She kept her maiden name. I pulled up her contact information. She should be landing at LaGuardia in about 3 hours. Detective Chen made notes. And she mentioned a safety deposit box. Box 847 at First National on Main Street in Westchester. She said Mom left evidence about Dad's gambling debts and other things. What other things? I hesitated, remembering Claire's words. She said Dad had been selling pills to patients who didn't need them. And that Mom was planning to report him to the medical board before she died. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. That's a serious accusation. I know how it sounds. But detective, 3 weeks ago I had a 3.8 GPA and was planning to apply to graduate school. Now I can barely remember my own name most days. That's not grief, that's pharmaceutical. A knock at the door interrupted us. Officer Martinez stuck his head in. Chen, we've got a problem. Dr. Richard Holloway is on the phone with Judge Patricia Reeves. He's requesting an emergency psychiatric evaluation and a 72-hour hold. My blood went cold. He can do that. If a licensed physician determines you're a danger to yourself or others, yes. Chen's expression was grim. Martinez, what's our timeline? Judge Reeves is reviewing his petition now. Could have a court order within the hour. But I have evidence, I protested, holding up my phone. I recorded him admitting he's been drugging me. Recording someone without consent isn't admissible in New York, Chen said gently. And even if it was, his lawyer would argue that anything said during your psychotic episode can't be trusted. I felt the walls closing in around me. This was exactly what Dad had planned. Even my evidence would be dismissed because I was supposedly too mentally ill to be believed. There's something else, Martinez said, stepping fully into the room. I ran the prescription information Maya provided. That bottle of lorazepam. It was filled at Westchester Pharmacy 3 days ago, prescribed to Margaret Foster by Dr. Richard Holloway. Chen looked up sharply. And? Margaret Foster died 6 months ago. The room went silent. I stared at Martinez, my heart pounding. He's been prescribing medication to dead patients. It gets worse, Martinez continued. I called Westchester Pharmacy and asked them to pull Dr. Holloway's recent prescription history. In the past 2 months, he's written over 40 prescriptions for lorazepam, alprazolam, and zolpidem to patients who are either deceased or have no record of requesting anxiety medication. Detective Chen was already reaching for her phone. That's prescription fraud and drug trafficking. Wait, I said, pieces clicking together in my mind. If he's been selling pills for 2 months, but he only started drugging me 3 weeks ago. He ramped up the operation to get more pills for you specifically, Chen finished. Which means this isn't just about your inheritance, he's been running a pill mill and used you to expand it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, *Maya, this is Claire. Just landed. Don't trust anyone until I get there. Your father called me an hour ago claiming you tried to hurt yourself. I told him he was lying, but he said he has medical documentation of suicidal ideation. Whatever he's planning, he's accelerating it. I'm in a cab now, *. I showed the message to Detective Chen, whose expression grew increasingly dark. He's trying to have me committed before Claire can get to that safety deposit box, I realized. If I'm declared mentally incompetent, he gets control of everything, including whatever evidence Mom left. Chen stood up abruptly. Martinez, get Judge Reeves on the phone. Tell her we have evidence of prescription fraud and that any psychiatric evaluation needs to be postponed pending investigation. And if she's already signed the order, then we'd better hope your aunt gets here fast. 20 minutes later, Judge Reeves' order came through. 72-hour psychiatric hold, effective immediately. My hands shook as Detective Chen read it aloud, her voice tight with frustration. Dr. Holloway presented compelling evidence of acute paranoid psychosis with potential for self-harm, she read. Patient has exhibited increasingly erratic behavior, including nocturnal episodes, academic decline, and elaborate delusional thinking regarding prescribed medication. But what about the prescription fraud? I asked desperately. We're investigating, but Maya. Chen folded the papers. This court order supersedes everything else. I have to transfer you to Westchester County Medical Center for evaluation. Through the interview room window, I could see Dad talking to a woman in a white coat, Dr. Brennan, I assumed. She was nodding sympathetically while reviewing a thick folder of what looked like medical records. Every few seconds, they both glanced toward my room with expressions of professional concern. How did he get documentation so fast? I wondered aloud. Martinez appeared in the doorway again, his face grim. I may have an answer to that. I contacted Maya's University Health Center. Dar. Holloway has been calling them weekly for the past month, reporting concerning behaviors and requesting copies of any counseling records. I never went to counseling. No, but he told them you had. When they said there were no records, he suggested that your paranoid episodes were making you forget appointments. He even offered to provide psychiatric evaluation services to help the university better support you. The scope of his manipulation was breathtaking. He'd been building a paper trail of mental illness for weeks, creating documentation where none existed and positioning himself as both the concerned father and the medical expert. There's more, Martinez continued. I spoke to 3 of his elderly patients' families. All of them mentioned that their loved ones had become increasingly confused and agitated after starting new medications Dr. Holloway prescribed. Medications they don't remember requesting. Detective Chen's phone rang. Morrison. A pause. How long ago? Another pause. Understood. We're on our way. She hung up and looked at me with something like pity. Maya, there's been a development. Claire Morrison was involved in a car accident about 10 miles from here. My blood turned to ice. Is she? She's alive, but she's been taken to Mercy General with what appears to be brake failure. The cab driver said the brakes stopped responding when they were coming down the hill on Route 9. I stared at Chen, my mind reeling. That's not an accident. We don't know that yet. Detective, my father spent months convincing everyone my mother was paranoid for thinking he was trying to hurt her. Now Claire comes to help me, and suddenly her brakes fail. My voice was rising. How many coincidences are we supposed to ignore? A commotion in the hallway made us all turn. Through the window, I could see Dad arguing with Officer Martinez while Dr. Brennan stood nearby, looking increasingly uncomfortable. What's happening? I asked. Chen stepped out briefly, then returned with a strange expression. Your father is demanding immediate transfer to the psychiatric facility. He says waiting any longer puts you at increased risk. But Claire can visit you once she's released from the hospital. Dad's voice came from the doorway. He stood there with Dr. Brennan, both of them projecting an aura of medical authority. Maya, sweetheart, I know you're frightened, but we need to get you the help you need. Dr. Holloway, Detective Chen interjected, we're still investigating some discrepancies in prescription records. Which has nothing to do with my daughter's immediate psychiatric needs, Dad interrupted smoothly. Dr. Brennan has reviewed all of Maya's recent episodes. The target incident, the academic decline, the paranoid ideation about medication. She needs stabilization before she hurts herself. Dr. Brennan nodded gravely. I've seen cases like this before. Delayed grief response combined with underlying psychological predisposition can manifest as elaborate conspiracy theories. The patient becomes convinced that the people trying to help them are actually enemies. But what about the prescription to Margaret Foster? I demanded. She's been dead for 6 months. Dad's expression remained perfectly calm. Margaret Foster is very much alive, Maya. She's one of my regular patients. This is exactly the kind of fabricated detail that concerns Dr. Brennan and me. He pulled out his phone and showed the screen to Detective Chen. Margaret's number. Would you like to call her yourself? Chen took the phone and dialed. After a moment, an elderly woman's voice came through clearly. Hello. Dr. Holloway. Mrs. Foster, this is Detective Chen with the Westchester Police. I'm calling to verify that you're a current patient of Dr. Holloway's. Oh yes, dear. He's been taking such good care of me since my Harold passed. Just picked up my anxiety medication yesterday. My world tilted sideways. Either Dad had somehow managed to resurrect a dead woman, or... Mrs. Foster, I called out, what's your address? Maya, that's enough, Dad said sharply. But the woman had heard me. 825, Elm Street, apartment 2B. Who's asking? I looked at Detective Chen desperately. Call the pharmacy. Ask them about the real Margaret Foster, the one who died 6 months ago. This has to be a different person. I think, Dr. Brennan said quietly, this demonstrates exactly why Maya needs immediate psychiatric intervention. She's unable to accept reality even when presented with direct evidence. Dad nodded sadly. It breaks my heart, but Dr. Brennan is right. Detective, I appreciate your thoroughness, but my daughter needs medical attention, not interrogation. The transport van was already waiting outside. The psychiatric transport van looked like a small ambulance, with reinforced windows and locks that only opened from the outside. As the EMT gestured for me to climb in, I felt like I was watching my own funeral. Wait, Detective Chen called out, jogging toward us from the station entrance. Dr. Holloway, I need 1 more minute. Dad's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Detective, every moment we delay puts Maya at greater risk. I understand, but I just got off the phone with Westchester Pharmacy. Chen's voice was carefully neutral. There are some discrepancies I need to clarify. Dr. Brennan checked his watch ostentatiously. The evaluation window at the medical center closes at 4 p.m. If we miss it, Maya will have to wait until Monday. This will just take a moment. Chen pulled out her notebook. Dr. Holloway, you said Margaret Foster is alive and picked up medication yesterday? That's correct. The pharmacist I spoke with remembers filling a prescription for Margaret Foster yesterday. But when I asked him to pull her file, he found something interesting. Chen flipped a page. There are 2 Margaret Fosters in their system. Margaret Ann Foster, age 83, who died last February. And Margaret Louise Foster, age 79, who moved into the Elm Street Senior Complex 3 weeks ago. My heart started pounding. 3 weeks ago, exactly when Dad had started drugging me. I'm not sure what you're implying, Dad said, but sweat was beading on his forehead despite the cool October air. I'm implying that you prescribed lorazepam to the deceased Margaret Ann Foster, but when questioned, you produced a different Margaret Foster to cover your tracks. Chen's voice remained level. The question is, how did you know there was another Margaret Foster to use as cover? Dr. Brennan stepped forward. Detective, with all due respect, this sounds like the same conspiracy thinking that. Dr. Brennan, Chen interrupted, when did Dr. Holloway first contact you about his daughter? About 3 weeks ago. He was concerned about her declining mental state. 3 weeks ago. The same week Margaret Louise Foster moved to Elm Street and you started prescribing anxiety medication to your daughter, Chen said to Dad. Quite a coincidence. I resent the implication. Chen's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted. Dr. Holloway, I just received a text from the brake specialist examining Claire Morrison's rental car. Preliminary inspection shows the brake lines were cut. The color drained from Dad's face. That's terrible, but I don't see how. The cut was made with surgical precision. Whoever did it knew exactly which line to sever for maximum delay. The brakes would work normally until heavy pressure was applied, like going down a steep hill. Dr. Brennan was looking between Dad and Chen with growing uncertainty. Richard, perhaps we should postpone Maya's admission until... No, Dad said firmly, grabbing my arm. Maya needs help now. These coincidences Detective Chen is describing, this is exactly the kind of paranoid pattern seeking that characterizes my daughter's condition. But his grip on my arm was tight enough to bruise, and his voice had lost its carefully modulated calm. Dr. Brennan, I said desperately, please check the timestamps on my father's calls to you. I bet they correlate exactly with when he started drugging me, when Claire booked her flight, when he realized his plan was falling apart. Dr. Brennan pulled out his phone, scrolling through his call log. His face went pale. Richard, your first call was October 8th at 11:47 p.m. You said Maya had just had a severe episode and you needed emergency consultation. That's right. But according to this police report, Chen said, consulting her notebook, Maya's first documented episode was October 9th, the target incident at 2:47 a.m. You called Dr. Brennan 3 hours before your daughter's first blackout. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Dad's hand was still gripping my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh. Unless, I said quietly, you knew the episode was coming because you'd already planned it. Dr. Brennan stepped back from my father like he'd been burned. Richard, I need you to explain how you knew to call me before Maya's episode occurred. Dad's grip on my arm loosened slightly, but his voice remained steady. I misspoke about the timing. Maya had been exhibiting concerning behaviors for days before the target incident. Sleep disturbances, confusion, academic problems. But you specifically told me she'd had a severe episode that night, Dr. Brennan pressed, scrolling through his notes. You described her as catatonic and unresponsive during our 11:47 p.m. call. If that episode hadn't happened yet. Memory issues are common when dealing with a loved one's mental health crisis, Dad said smoothly, but I could feel him trembling slightly. The stress of watching Maya deteriorate has been overwhelming. Detective Chen's radio crackled to life. She listened for a moment, then her expression hardened. Dr. Holloway, that was the hospital. Claire Morrison is conscious and asking for police protection. She claims someone called her room an hour ago, pretending to be a nurse, asking detailed questions about her condition and when she'd be released. Hospital staff make those calls routinely, Dad replied, but his professional facade was cracking around the edges. The caller specifically asked if she'd mentioned anything about a safety deposit box to her visitors. That's not routine, Dr. Holloway. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, Maya, this is Claire. Using nurse's phone. Your father just called hospital claiming to be my emergency contact. Wanted to know my condition and if I'd spoken to police. I told them I have no emergency contact named Richard. They're reviewing security footage of parking garage where my cab was tampered with, I showed the message to Detective Chen, whose hand moved instinctively toward her radio. Dr. Brennan, she said calmly, I think we need to postpone this psychiatric evaluation. Absolutely not, Dad snapped, his mask finally slipping completely. Maya is displaying increasingly erratic behavior. She's fabricating elaborate scenarios, manipulating evidence, even coaching her aunt to support her delusions. Richard, Dr. Brennan said quietly, I'm withdrawing my recommendation for immediate admission. These inconsistencies need to be resolved before. James, you don't understand what you're dealing with. Dad's voice took on a desperate edge. Maya has been planning this for weeks. She's incredibly intelligent, incredibly manipulative. She's turned everyone against me, her aunt, the police, even you now. Dad, I said, looking directly at him, if I'm so manipulative and intelligent, how am I supposedly having psychotic episodes and blackouts? The question hung in the air like a blade. Dr. Brennan's eyebrows rose slightly. Intermittent lucidity is common in, Dad began. No, it's not, Dr. Brennan interrupted. Not with the symptoms you described. Richard, paranoid psychosis doesn't work like a switch. Patients don't alternate between elaborate manipulation and complete cognitive impairment. Detective Chen's radio crackled again. She stepped away to listen, then returned with grim satisfaction. Dr. Holloway, the security footage from Mercy General's parking garage shows a man in scrubs approaching Claire Morrison's rental car approximately 30 minutes before she arrived. The timestamp is 2:17 p.m., exactly when you told Dr. Brennan you were in your office doing paperwork. Dad's face had gone ashen. I want a lawyer. I think that's a very good idea, Chen replied, reaching for her handcuffs. Dr. Richard Holloway, you're under arrest for prescription fraud, attempted vehicular homicide, and conspiracy to commit fraud. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Dad looked at me with something I'd never seen before, genuine fear. Maya, you have no idea what you've done. The people I owe money to, they won't just disappear because I'm in jail. They'll come for you next. The words hit me like ice water. Even with handcuffs around his wrists, Dad's threat felt absolutely real. Detective Chen must have seen something in my expression because she immediately stepped between us. Dr. Holloway, threatening a witness is another felony, she said coldly. But please, tell us more about these people you owe money to. Dad's lawyer instincts finally kicked in. His mouth snapped shut, and he stared straight ahead as Officer Martinez led him toward a patrol car. Dar. Brennan approached me cautiously, like I might bolt. Maya, I owe you a profound apology. Your father presented very convincing documentation, and I should have insisted on independent verification before recommending commitment. What kind of documentation? I asked, my voice shaking. Detailed reports of episodes, academic records showing declining performance, even what appeared to be journal entries describing paranoid thoughts. He shook his head. All fabricated, I assume. Journal entries. My stomach dropped. What did they say? Dr. Brennan pulled out his tablet and scrolled through files. Entries dating back 6 weeks, describing feeling watched, suspecting your roommate of poisoning your food, believing your professors were conspiring to fail you. He paused. There was also an entry about hearing your mother's voice telling you not to trust anyone. I stared at him. I never wrote any of that. I don't even keep a journal. The handwriting analysis will prove that now, Detective Chen said grimly. Along with everything else. Maya, we need to get you somewhere safe while we process your father's arrest. My phone rang. Claire's number. Maya. Thank God. Are you okay? Claire, where are you? Still at Mercy General, but the doctors say I can be discharged in a few hours. Just some bruised ribs and a concussion. Her voice was shaky but determined. We need to get to that safety deposit box immediately. If Richard's been arrested, his associates will know something's wrong. What associates? The people he owes money to aren't just bookies, Maya. Your mother discovered he'd been laundering money through his medical practice. Taking cash payments for unnecessary procedures, falsifying insurance claims, the whole operation. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. She found evidence that ties him to the Torino family. My blood went cold. Even I'd heard of the Torinos, a crime family that controlled most of the illegal gambling and loan sharking in Westchester County. How much does he owe them? According to your mother's records, over $800,000 as of 6 months ago. With interest. Claire trailed off. Detective Chen had been listening to my side of the conversation. She grabbed the phone. Ms. Morrison, this is Detective Chen. We need those records immediately. That's what I've been trying to tell you. First National, Box 847. But Detective, you should know, Richard called the hospital 20 minutes ago. He used some kind of administrative override to access my patient information, claimed he needed it for Maya's psychiatric evaluation. Chen's face went white. What information? Everything. My condition, when I'm being discharged, whether I'd mentioned the safety deposit box to anyone. Claire's voice turned urgent. If the Torinos realize Richard can't pay them back because he's in jail, they'll come after Maya's inheritance directly. How would they even know about the inheritance? Because Richard's been using it as collateral for months. Your mother found loan documents with your trust fund listed as guaranteed payment. I felt like I was drowning. So even if we expose Dad's crimes, these people will still come after me. Unless we can prove the loan agreements are fraudulent, Claire said. Maya, your mother spent weeks documenting everything before she died. Bank records, audio recordings, photographs. She even hired a private investigator. Detective Chen was already barking orders into her radio. I need units at First National Bank immediately. And get me everything you can on recent Torino family activities. Dr. Brennan cleared his throat awkwardly. Detective, should Maya be in protective custody? Before Chin could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from another unknown number, *Maya Holloway. Your father missed his payment deadline. We need to discuss terms. Westchester Diner, Route 9. 1 hour. Come alone or we visit your roommate instead, *. Chen read the message over my shoulder, her face grim. They're moving fast. I have to go, I said. They threatened Jess. Absolutely not. This is exactly what they want, to isolate you. Chen was already coordinating with other officers. We'll have units at the diner, surveillance on your roommate, and a team at the bank. What if they realize it's a setup? Then we'll have bigger problems. Chen looked me in the eye. Maya, I need you to understand something. If your father really owes the Torinos $800,000, they won't just walk away. They'll pursue this until they get paid, one way or another. My phone rang again. This time it was Jess. Maya, there are weird guys in a parking lot outside our dorm. They've been sitting in a black SUV for 20 minutes, just watching the building. My hand started shaking again, but this time it wasn't withdrawal from lorazepam. This was pure terror. Jess, listen to me carefully. Pack a bag right now and go to your sister's place in Brooklyn. Don't come back until I call you. Maya, you're scaring me. What's going on? I'll explain later. Just go. Now. Detective Chen was watching me with grim understanding. Maya, we're going to end this today. But I need you to trust me completely. I looked at her, then at Dr. Brennan, then at the patrol car where my father sat in handcuffs, probably calculating his next move even now. What do you need me to do? The plan Detective Chen outlined was terrifyingly simple. I would go to the diner as instructed, but with FBI surveillance and a wire. What she didn't tell me until we were already in the car was that the Torino family had been under federal investigation for 2 years. Your father's gambling debts might be the break we've been looking for, Agent Rebecca Torres explained as she fitted the tiny recording device under my shirt. Vincent Torino handles collection personally for debts over $500,000. If we can get him on tape making threats or discussing the loan operation. You're using me as bait, I said, my voice barely steady. We're giving you a chance to end this permanently, Torres corrected. Maya, even if we arrest your father for prescription fraud, that doesn't make his debt disappear. The Torinos will pursue you for years unless we can dismantle their entire operation. Detective Chen handed me an earpiece so small it was nearly invisible. We'll be monitoring everything. If the situation becomes dangerous, we extract you immediately. The Westchester Diner sat on a lonely stretch of Route 9, the kind of place where truckers stop for coffee at 3 a.m. and nobody asked questions about the customers. I pushed through the glass door at exactly 4:47 p.m., my heart hammering against the wire taped to my chest. A man in his 50s sat in the back booth, wearing an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the bulk of what was probably a shoulder holster. His silver hair was slicked back, and his hands, folded calmly on the table, bore the kind of scars that came from decades of violence. Maya Holloway, he said as I approached. It wasn't a question. Vincent Torino, I replied, sliding into the booth across from him. His eyebrows rose slightly. Smart girl. Your father said you were sharp. He gestured to the waitress. Coffee for the lady. Where is my father? Westchester County lockup, last I checked. Vincent's voice was surprisingly cultured, with just a hint of old country accent. Prescription fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy. Quite a list. The waitress poured coffee with shaking hands and hurried away. Vincent noticed. Tina's nervous because she knows who I am. But you're not nervous enough, Maya. That concerns me. I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug to hide their trembling. What do you want? What I've always wanted. The $847,000 your father borrowed from my organization, plus 6 months of accumulated interest. Total comes to $1.2 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. Even if Dad hadn't already stolen from my trust fund, Mom's entire inheritance was only worth about $2 million. I don't have that kind of money. Vincent pulled out his phone and showed me a photograph. It was a bank statement, my trust fund account, showing a balance of $1,847,332.18 as of yesterday. Your father provided this as collateral when he took the loan. He assured us that upon your mother's death and your 23rd birthday next month, he would have full access to these funds. But he doesn't have access. He was never supposed to. That, Vincent interrupted, is not my problem. Your father signed a binding agreement. The money was guaranteed. I forced myself to meet his eyes. What if the loan agreement is fraudulent? What if my father forged documents or lied about his authority over my inheritance? Vincent's smile was razor-thin. Are you suggesting your father is a liar, Maya? I'm suggesting you might want to examine his loan application very carefully. Because if he defrauded you the same way he defrauded his patients, you might have legal recourse that doesn't involve threatening college students. For the first time, Vincent looked genuinely surprised. He leaned back in the booth, studying me with new interest. Your father said you were mentally ill. Delusional. In and out of psychiatric facilities. My father drugged me with stolen prescription medication to make me appear mentally ill so he could access my inheritance. Ask Detective Chen, they arrested him 3 hours ago with forged prescriptions in his pocket. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the table. Finally, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Tony. I need you to pull the Holloway file. Every document, every signature, every piece of paper Richard gave us. A pause. Now. While Vincent waited for his associate to call back, he studied me with the calculating gaze of someone who built a career on reading people's tells. The diner felt unnaturally quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant clatter of dishes in the kitchen. You know, Vincent said finally, in 30 years of this business, I've learned to spot when someone's playing an angle. Your father came to us 6 months ago, desperate, sweating through his shirt. Classic gambling addict hitting rock bottom. He sipped his coffee slowly. But you're sitting here calm as ice, wearing a wire, probably with half the FBI parked outside. My blood froze. I don't know what you. Maya. His voice was almost gentle. I can see the outline of the transmitter under your shirt. And Agent Torres has been investigating my family for 2 years. You think I don't know what she looks like? Vincent raised his hand slightly, and I caught a glimpse of 2 men in flannel shirts at the counter turning to face us. Not truckers. Security. Here's what's going to happen, Vincent continued conversationally. You're going to reach under your shirt, remove the wire, and place it on the table. Then we're going to have a real conversation about your father's debt. My earpiece crackled almost inaudibly. Agent Torres' voice. Maya, we're moving in. Keep him talking. But Vincent's hearing was apparently excellent. His smile widened. Agent Torres, I assume. Tell your people to stay in their vehicles. The young lady and I are just having coffee. I had no choice. With shaking fingers, I peeled the tape away from my chest and placed the tiny recording device on the table between us. Vincent picked it up, examined it briefly, then dropped it into his coffee cup. Much better. Now, about your father's situation. His phone buzzed, and he answered immediately. What did you find, Tony? Vincent's expression grew increasingly dark as he listened. Finally, he hung up and fixed me with a stare that made my skin crawl. It seems you were right about one thing, Maya. Your father has been creative with his paperwork. Vincent's voice had lost all pretense of civility. The power of attorney documents he used to secure the loan. Forged. The medical records declaring you mentally incompetent. Fabricated. Even the death certificate he showed us for your mother has discrepancies. So the loan agreement is invalid, I said, hope rising in my chest. Oh no, sweetheart. The loan is very real. Richard Holloway borrowed $847,000 from my organization. He spent that money at poker tables and racetracks from here to Atlantic City. Vincent leaned forward. What's invalid is his claim that he had legal access to your inheritance. The implications hit me like a truck. Which means your father owes us money he never had the authority to guarantee. And since he can't pay from prison. Vincent gestured around the empty diner. We need to explore alternative collection methods. But you can't hold me responsible for debts I didn't consent to. Maya, do you think this is a court of law? Your father used your inheritance as collateral. Whether he had the legal right to do so is irrelevant. The money exists, and we intend to collect it. Vincent's phone rang again. He glanced at the caller ID and his face went pale. Excuse me, he said, stepping away from the booth. Through the diner's window, I could see FBI vehicles positioned across the parking lot, but they seemed frozen in place. Vincent's men at the counter were watching them with amused expressions, like they were enjoying some private joke. Vincent returned to the table, his demeanor completely changed. Gone was the calm businessman. Now he looked like a man whose carefully laid plans had just exploded in his face. Maya, we have a much bigger problem than your father's debt. What kind of problem? I asked, though Vincent's expression already told me I didn't want to know the answer. He slumped back into the booth, suddenly looking every one of his 50-something years. That was my nephew Carlo. He's been monitoring federal communications since your father got arrested. Vincent rubbed his temples. Maya, your father didn't just forge documents to get a loan from us. He's been feeding information to the FBI for 8 months. The diner seemed to tilt sideways. What? Richard Holloway is a federal informant. Has been since February, right after your mother died. Vincent's voice was flat, defeated. Every conversation, every meeting, every transaction, he's been recording all of it. My mind raced back to Dad's behavior over the past months. The late-night phone calls he claimed were patient emergencies. The new medical conferences that kept him away for weekends. The way he'd suddenly become interested in my college schedule and whereabouts. He was gathering evidence on your organization, I whispered. Worse than that. He was actively setting up scenarios to implicate higher-level members. That poker game where he lost $200,000 in one night. FBI operation. The racetrack meetings where he negotiated payment extensions. All recorded. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. Your father played us from the beginning. But then why? I struggled to process this revelation. Why did he drug me? Why try to have me committed? Vincent's laugh was bitter. Because his FBI handlers demanded bigger fish. They wanted him to arrange meetings with our suppliers, our money laundering contacts, our political connections. But he needed more time and more credibility within our organization. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. Having a mentally ill daughter made him seem more desperate. More authentic. Exactly. Richard could justify borrowing larger sums, taking bigger risks, because he had medical bills and psychiatric care expenses. Vincent pulled out his phone and showed me a text thread. Look at these messages he sent our associates over the past month. The texts made my stomach churn, * Maya's condition worsening. Need advance on next payment for private facility, * psychiatric evaluation scheduled, will need $50,000 for treatment costs, * doctors recommend long-term residential care. Can we discuss expanded credit terms, *. He was using my fake mental illness to borrow more money he never intended to pay back, I said, the full scope of his betrayal washing over me. And every dollar he borrowed, every meeting he attended, every conversation about payment schedules, it's all evidence in a federal racketeering case. Vincent's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and cursed under his breath. What now? Carlo says the FBI raid started 20 minutes ago. 12 locations simultaneously. Our bookkeeper, our loan officers, 3 of our legitimate businesses. Vincent stood up abruptly. Maya, you need to understand something. My organization is finished. Within hours, most of my associates will be in federal custody. Isn't that good news? Vincent's smile was predatory. For the FBI. Absolutely. For you. He gestured toward the window, where I could see more black SUVs pulling into the parking lot, not FBI vehicles. The families we do business with don't appreciate being exposed by federal informants. And they have a very simple policy about loose ends. My blood turned to ice. I'm not a loose end. I didn't know anything about Dad's arrangement with you. But you're Richard Holloway's daughter. You have access to the money he used as collateral. And most importantly, Vincent's expression grew genuinely sympathetic. You're the reason he started cooperating with federal agents in the first place. What do you mean? Your father's FBI handler is Agent Rebecca Torres. She's been investigating organized crime in Westchester for 3 years, but she could never get close enough to build solid cases. Vincent pulled up another message on his phone. Until she found Richard's gambling debts and realized he had a daughter with a substantial inheritance. The whole operation was designed around using your trust fund to establish his credibility with multiple crime families. The implications crashed over me like a tsunami. Agent Torres hadn't been trying to protect me, she'd been using me as unwitting bait in a federal investigation that had been running for months. Torres knew, I breathed. She knew Dad was drugging me. She knew about the psychiatric evaluation, the commitment papers, all of it. Vincent nodded grimly. And she let it continue because desperate, protective fathers make the most believable informants. His phone rang again. We need to go. Now. Vincent's phone call lasted 30 seconds, but his face told me everything I needed to know before he even hung up. Torres is dead, he said flatly. Car bomb in the FBI parking garage 15 minutes ago. Along with 2 other agents working the case. My hands went numb. The woman who'd been using me as bait, who'd let my father drug me for months to maintain his cover, she was gone. And with her died any chance of federal protection. Maya, listen carefully. I'm about to do something that goes against 30 years of business principles. Vincent pulled out a thick envelope from his jacket. These are copies of every document your father gave us. Bank records, forged power of attorney papers, even recordings of him discussing your mental illness with our associates. Why are you giving me this? Because in about 10 minutes, people much worse than me are going to arrive here. People who don't distinguish between federal informants and their children. His voice was urgent now. But there's something they don't know yet, something even Torres didn't know. Vincent leaned across the table. Your mother wasn't just suspicious about your father's activities. She was building a case to have his medical license revoked and his gambling debts declared legally invalid due to fraud. The safety deposit box, I whispered. Box 847 contains more than just evidence of prescription fraud, Maya. Your mother hired a forensic accountant who traced every dollar your father borrowed, every forged signature, every falsified medical record. Vincent stood up, scanning the parking lot nervously. She proved that Richard Holloway hasn't been legally authorized to make financial decisions in your name since you turned 18. My phone buzzed. Claire, asterisk at the bank now. Police escort. You need to see what's in here. Your mother was brilliant, asterisk. Go, Vincent said urgently. Take Route 287 to avoid the main roads. The people coming for you don't know about the safety deposit box yet, but that won't last long. Vincent, why are you helping me? He paused at the diner door. Your father's cooperation with the FBI destroyed my family's business. But using a kid's trust fund and drugging your own daughter? He shook his head. Some lines you don't cross. I made it to First National Bank in 12 minutes, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Claire was waiting in the vault with Detective Chen and 2 uniformed officers, surrounded by neat stacks of documents. Maya, thank God. Claire's face was pale but determined. Your mother documented everything. The safety deposit box contents were spread across a table, bank statements showing Dad's gambling losses totaling $1.2 million over 2 years, audio recordings of him discussing Maya's deteriorating mental state with various lenders, and most damning of all, a forensic analysis proving he'd been forging my signature on financial documents since my 18th birthday. But this is the key piece, Detective Chen said, holding up a legal document. Your mother filed a preemptive lawsuit 3 days before she died, declaring all of your father's financial agreements null and void due to fraud and forgery. She knew she was dying, Claire added quietly. The cancer was worse than she let on. But she spent her last weeks making sure Richard couldn't steal your future. I picked up one of the audio recordings, dated just 2 weeks before Mom's death. Her voice, weak but determined, this is Margaret Holloway, making this statement of my own free will. My husband Richard has been systematically defrauding our daughter Maya's trust fund. I have evidence that he forged Maya's signature on multiple loan agreements and has been using her inheritance as collateral for gambling debts she never consented to. There were 12 hours of recordings total. Mom had documented everything, Dad's late-night phone calls to bookies, his meetings with loan sharks, even his plans to have me declared mentally incompetent. The federal court judge reviewed everything an hour ago, Detective Chen said. Every debt your father incurred using your inheritance as collateral has been declared fraudulent and legally invalid. Which means Vincent Torino and every other creditor your father dealt with has no legal claim to your money. Claire's smile was fierce. Your mother didn't just leave you an inheritance, Maya. She left you ironclad legal protection. My phone rang. An unknown number. Don't answer it, Chen warned, but I was already accepting the call. Maya Holloway. The voice was cold, professional. This is Detective Marcus Webb, Internal Affairs. We need to talk. About what? About Agent Rebecca Torres and her unauthorized operation involving your father. We have evidence that she allowed a federal informant to commit multiple felonies against his own daughter in order to maintain his cover. I looked at Claire, who nodded encouragingly. Detective Webb, I think you'll find everything you need in the evidence we just recovered from my mother's safety deposit box. 2 hours later, I sat in the Internal Affairs office watching Detective Webb review Mom's recordings. His expression grew darker with each revelation. Agent Torres knowingly allowed Richard Holloway to drug his daughter with stolen prescription medication, he said finally. She was aware of the psychiatric evaluation scheme and did nothing to stop it because it enhanced his credibility as an informant. What happens now? Now. Your father faces federal charges for prescription fraud, conspiracy, attempted vehicular homicide, and wire fraud. The organized crime families lose all legal claim to your inheritance. And the FBI conducts a full investigation into Torres' handling of informants. Webb closed the file. Maya, your mother's legal work was extraordinary. Every document your father forged, every signature he falsified, every debt he incurred in your name, all of it is legally invalid. I walked out of the internal affairs building 3 hours later to find Claire waiting by her rental car, a genuine smile on her face for the first time in days. It's over. I asked. It's over. Your inheritance is protected, your father's in federal custody, and the organized crime investigation will continue without you. Claire hugged me carefully, mindful of her bruised ribs. Your mother would be so proud, Maya. She spent her last weeks making sure you'd be safe. 6 months later, I was back at college, my GPA restored to 3.8 and my organic chemistry degree well within reach. Dad pleaded guilty to 17 federal charges and received 12 years in prison. The Torino family's remaining members were either in custody or had fled the state. But the best part was reading Mom's final letter, which Claire had saved for last. Asterisk, my dearest Maya, if you're reading this, it means Richard tried to steal your future and failed. I spent my final weeks making sure that no matter what he attempted, you would have the tools to fight back. Trust your instincts, trust the people who truly love you, and never let anyone convince you that you're not strong enough to protect yourself. You are braver than you believe and more powerful than he could ever imagine. All my love, Mom, asterisk. The psychiatrist had believed me. But more importantly, I had learned to believe myself.